has come and gone. We're going to take one last look at the first half and preview the remainder of the season for the Pittsburgh Pirates on today's episode of Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. My name is Ethan Smith, bringing you your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates, from a lifelong fan to lifelong fans like the guy sitting next to me on the screen right now. Today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Make sure you use that for all of your summer travel plans and even going into the fall, because I'll be using it for a wedding that I'm in October, but more on Booking.com later. We are joined today by Mike Nicastro of Mic'd Up Sports, and I always forget the name of your Steelers podcast. So what is the name of your podcast? I listen to it all the time, and I always forget.
We've had like 7 of them, so I totally understand. We started as Yins Are Crazy, and that's when we kind of covered all the bases when I was still doing some Bucko talk, some Penguins mixed in. And then we now have the Sick podcast, Steelers Crazy. The Sick podcast company runs that for us. They do a great job. And yeah, we're looking forward to the season. We got some good stuff coming for the listeners, some athletes that we're going to have back on. But I'm excited to talk Pirates today. I don't get to do it all that often.
Yeah.
I completely removed myself from talking Buccos over the past couple of years because I'm so emotionally attached that I become very knee-jerk, and there's no objectivity when it comes to me talking about the Buccos. So it's nice that we kind of had this all-star break before we're getting into this upcoming series, because I'm able to kind of keep a level head and really evaluate things with a few days off.
Well, and it's easy to keep a level head, too, when they enter the All-Star break on a 4-game winning streak, which, mind you, everyone, that is the longest streak in Major League Baseball right now. And they're 48-48. So you go into the All-Star break. Obviously, all of the talk was about Paul Skeens. He has his one inning of work against Stephen Kwan, Gunnar Henderson, Juan Soto, and Aaron Judge. Soto got his wish. He said he wanted to make sure Aaron Judge got an at-bat against him, and then Skeens gave him 100 right down the middle, and he just grounded out the third base. Literally, I audibly said this after that at-bat, Mike, and I haven't said this on the show yet. I audibly said womp womp because of how anticlimactic that was. And All-Star break, All-Star, you have all this stuff going on. You had Bubba Chandler and Termar Johnson on Saturday in the Futures game. Great from them. You guys can find a piece I did on that at Steel City Pirates. Monday, obviously, you had the Home Run Derby. No Pirates were in that, but still a fun little event to have outside of something that happened. And then you had Brian Reynolds and Paul Skeens in the All-Star game. And you had the MLB draft as well. All of that's behind us now. And what else is behind us is everything that we saw before the All-Star break. And you would probably agree, Mike, that the first half was a little weird. It was a very weird first half. What are your knee-jerk, since you said, be knee-jerk,
Sure.
What are your knee-jerk thoughts about what we saw in that first half of the season? Well, first half, because, there's only 66 games left, but first half of the season.
I'll touch on Skeens really quickly, too. I think right after the Judge AB, I texted my buddies and I said, well, that was anticlimactic, but cool. So I kind of felt the same way. You would have liked the 6-pitch at bat with some foul balls and hopefully ultimately ending in a strikeout. Sort of like the Skeens Ohtani matchup when he struck him out the first time and then Ohtani went yard on him the second time. That was that was a moment, obviously, that would have been pretty cool to have that similar happen. But yeah, man, first half wonky. Up and down, no question. Times where everyone thought the sky was falling, and then other times where, of course, the Pirates are going to win the World Series. I think the biggest takeaway, obviously, is the fact that the pitching has been phenomenal. Who would have ever thought Bailey Falter, who obviously is injured, and we'll see where that goes, would be a serious contributor to the rotation. I know all of us coming into spring training, when rosters were announced in the rotation, were like, really, they're putting Bailey Falter in this roster and we expect this team to win from day one. He was phenomenal. So props where props are due, because I was one of those individuals. Skeens being here quicker maybe than some thought, Jared Jones, obviously his ascension to not just this rookie who throws hard, but a player who was arguably one of the top 5 pitchers in the National League while he was
Yeah.
healthy. And then Mitch Keller being Mitch Keller, he's taken a back seat almost unfairly to Paul Skeens, because Keller has still been incredibly consistent. Obviously he just lost his 5-inning streak. That was, an insane streak. But I think that's the biggest surprise. And then you look at the other side of it. The reason that they haven't had a big winning streak because of this phenomenal pitching is how crappy the hitting has been. And I think once again, Ethan, going into spring and before the season, we all said, hey, the biggest question mark on the Pirates is the pitching, but they can hit up and down the lineup. They're pretty deep. And that hasn't been the case whatsoever. Obviously, you have guys like Sawinski, Michael A. Taylor, who are really, really struggling. I don't have to tell you about the right field position. There's, cycling in Olivares, and now it's Palacios. A lot of holes, long story short, Ethan. So it's very strange. It's been a bit backwards to me. With the pitching being as good as it has and the hitting just being, bottom 5 in the league for my money. And hopefully, water finds its level, but it might in regard to the pitching as well.
Yeah, and I think that's why we all love baseball, is because before the season we were discussing, okay, we'll see Paul Skeens in June or July, and we'll see like the offense will carry, and spring training kind of gave us a little glimpse into what we thought the offense might be, leading all of baseball in home runs in spring training. They came out guns a-blazing against Miami and Washington and Baltimore. And then after that, it was just like, what's going on? Like, what happened? Rowdy Tellez, obviously one of the better stories of the first half, had a terrible first 2 months, comes back and has been one of the better hitters in all of the National League since June 1st. Brian Reynolds, since the calendar turned June, has been just on fire. And you look at all these things and how they come together versus what we looked at in the preseason, and it's like just a complete flip. I mean, we were expecting a rotation of Keller, Falter, Perez, Gonzalez, and maybe Priester to start the year, and now you come into it and you're like, oh, okay, Bailey Falter is actually really good. Oh, okay, Jared Jones is making the team out of spring. Oh, Paul Skeens is going to be up here May 11th. Like, it all just changed really fast.
Ortiz.
And I think that's, Ortiz as well, who's been a revelation this year.
And
when you would say, what's one word, Mike, that you would use to describe that first half? Because let's also keep in mind that the Pirates had the second longest streak ever of not winning 3 games in a row or not losing 3 games in a row in baseball history at one point. So what would be one word to kind of put a bow on the pre-All-Star stuff that we saw?
You're going to laugh. I mean, this is the popular kids slang these days. I don't even know if this is a word or Urban Dictionary, but I'm going to say mid. They have been mid. They've been, their offense has been poor enough where they're unable to sustain any type of winning streak, and their pitching has been good enough where they haven't been able to fall off the cliff and have a losing streak. They have been exactly what their record is, right? They're at 500 signals average. There are stretches where they look like this is a team that can contend, right? And if you make it into the postseason, oh my goodness, right? You hear people like John Smoltz during an All-Star game saying, if this Pirates team make it to the playoffs, look out. I hear that from the national media all the time. And then I've seen multiple weeks where this offense goes silent, and I say everything that they're doing is irrelevant because they can't hit, and they're not going to beat good teams in the second half. So mediocre, mid, average. I'm not running down the street throwing a parade on East Carson right now because they're 500 at the break.
Yeah, and I think that actually is a pretty good moniker to use, because it's going to kind of go right into our next conversation we're going to have as we preview the remainder of the season. Mike, you saying that the Pirates are mid has actually put them in a pretty good spot because they're thankful that a lot of other teams are also in that spot as well. So we'll preview the remainder of the season as well as looking at the trade deadline later on, right after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. I'm even talking about your rival cities. I mean, yeah, could you imagine, guys, if Mike went to Baltimore for whatever reason? Like, oh my God, that would be terrible, right? But, Baltimore probably has very nice hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com that you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city. I don't know if I ever want to go to Wrigley Field and go see a game in Chicago, but I might have to, because I could find hotels that look over stadiums, family-friendly resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. And they have so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. So book today on Booking.com, on the website, or in the Booking.com app. Today's episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100, because you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Do you think Caitlin Clark can get more than 3.5 3-pointers made in the WNBA All-Star Game this Saturday? Well, if you think she can, guess what? I made my first $10 deposit. I received an instant $10 bonus. And if you have the skills, you could play for a shot at turning $10 into $1,000. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. And after making Locked On Pirates your first listen, make sure you make Locked On Sports Today your second listen. Locked On Sports Today is, of course, giving you all the news you need in sports every single day. For Mike right now, he probably needs to tune into it, because I'm sure they're talking about Brandon Ayuk going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's going to be a talk of the town. It has
I'm
been
so sick
for
of those 2 words.
Yeah. About 5 months now.
I'm so sick
Locked
of
On
those 2
Sports
words.
Today will likely be all over that. You can also find the 24/7 streaming channel of Locked On Sports Today. And if you want to listen to Pirates games on the go, just make sure you look up Pirates on Sirius XM, so you can always listen to the Pirates when you're on the move. So we kind of looked at the first half of the season, and you mentioned the word mid, and yes, that I believe will end up in the actual dictionary at some point, I think. But the Pirates being mid, and I've even heard other hosts of the shows of the teams that I'm about to mention say the same thing, is being mediocre is better than being bad. And that's what the Pirates have been. They've been a mediocre baseball team to the point where they are literally in the middle of where they could be at 48-48. But you look around and you see St. Louis at 50-46. St. Louis has gotten the better of them so far, but they aren't this ungodly world beater that the Pirates can't beat. New York Mets, you're done with them. You lost that season series, whatever. Arizona, you got them soon. San Diego, you got them soon, right with you. Cincinnati, you're going to play again. San Francisco, you're done with them. Chicago, you're going to play again. So what's interesting is the dynamic you can build, that the Pirates are a game and a half out of the wild card, but they're playing all these teams still.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost going to be like, and I hate to keep bringing up the Steelers comparisons, but you look at the schedule they have this year and you see all the division games at the end, it could flip like that. And that's what I love about how the Pirates are set up here, because where they're at is not ideal. I mean, you don't want to be 500. You want to be better than that. But you play Arizona still. You play San Diego still. You still play Cincinnati and Chicago again. You still play St. Louis again. And you have chances to beat teams like the Dodgers and the Astros, who are very good teams as well, and the Phillies this weekend. So what are your initial thoughts about this schedule that they have, especially to round this out? Because I'll go ahead and give it to you. I mean, you obviously have Philly, St. Louis, but then you have Arizona and Houston to round out July. How important are these games for the Pirates to really get off to a good start out of the All-Star break?
Well, absolutely critical. And the reason I'm a little bit more glass half empty is given the fact that they just obviously had their first 3-game win streak since, the first week of, what was it? June?
It was May.
May. It was the first week of May, right? Right after it was the Marlins. I think was the very first week was the last 3-game win streak. So for me, you're going to see a team like already have the Mets, Cardinals roll off 13 of 17, something like that, right? And this offense for Pittsburgh, does not have the ability to do that. Now, this goes hand in hand with the second half because I think that can change if they add bats, right? So that's where, my glass half empty, pessimistic approach of this team not being able to compete with a lot of the teams on the schedule in the second half, as well as not get to that point where you're going to need a 12-5 run because there are so many teams bunched up. Yeah, that's good. But because so many are bunched up, it's inevitable. A couple of them are going to, win 13 out of 20 at some point, right? When you have 6 to 8 teams in that mix. The Pirates can do that if they go out and get some bats and make this a more complete team. Now it's a gauntlet, dude. You're absolutely right. Phillies are the best team in baseball. This rotation is, we don't talk about the Pirates having, arguably the best rotation in baseball. I think the one ahead of them easily is Philadelphia. You're talking, we know we have Aaron Nola tonight. You're talking Nola, Wheeler, Suarez, Christopher Sanchez. I mean, whatever order you want to throw these guys in, they're pretty much all stars.
Yeah.
And not like they, and you put that together with, guys like Schwarber, Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, Alec Bohm. Look what he just did in the home run derby in the All-Star game. Incredibly impressive year for him. Well deserved. I don't know how the Pirates split with them earlier in the season. They were playing really good ball and riding high at that time. This is a big weekend. Place is going to be jam-packed. I've seen tickets on resale for like $95.
Yep.
Yins or Palooza. Ethan, you got Wiz Khalifa bobbleheads in the building.
Yeah.
I'm almost happy if they take one. This is a fantastic team. And then, I'll throw it back to you in a second here, but you mentioned they have everything in front of them, which includes the NL West and the AL West. Diamondbacks are playing a lot better baseball. They're not an easy out whatsoever. Obviously a World Series team last year. Padres starting to come back to earth a little bit, but their pitchers are going to get healthier at some point here. I think guys like Musgrove and Darvish have been out, and I'm not sure to what extent, but they're going to acquire some arms at some point. They weren't afraid to go out and get Luis Arraez. They're all in this season, and their offense is really, really good. So that's going to be a test. And then last thing is the AL West. You don't just face an Astros or Rangers team that, have been that their best baseball is behind them. That's the best way to put it. Their best baseball is ahead of them. The Astros maybe have the best record in baseball, I want to say, over the past 2 months. They had that terrible start. Texas is getting healthier. They're getting starting pitchers back now as well. They're going to make a postseason run. They maybe had a little bit of a World Series hangover, right? You could say, coming into the season. You're not just playing a couple AL West Texas teams who are going to be, ho-hum, we're making the playoffs anyway. They're fighting for a division title. They are getting better, and they're probably going to get better at the trade deadline too. It's a gauntlet.
Yeah, and there's two schools of thought, I think, to look at this. Is the Pirates have, they've had some success against these lesser teams, but you've also seen them drop series to the LA Angels. We've seen them drop games to the Colorado Rockies. We've seen them drop games to the Tampa Bay Rays, who are likely going to be a selling team. You've seen them drop games against some of these lesser teams, but meanwhile, you mentioned it, they've beaten the Dodgers in a series already. They split with the Phillies already. So they've played good baseball against very good teams already. And truthfully, and this will go kind of hand in hand to what we'll talk about in the third segment, but we'll push it back first, is the pitching staff they have, I think, gives them an opportunity against literally anybody. It's just a matter of what you said. Can the offense just find some microcosm of consistency to just go on a streak for a week? I think a week could literally just change the entire skill. Like, let's say the offense comes out in these first 6 games and absolutely lights the world on fire. They win 5 of 6 against Philadelphia and St. Louis. They sweep St. Louis, right? That's a great idea to have, but the offense would have to go ballistic for like a week. And even then, you're doing some damage there, but you still have Arizona, you still have Houston, you have Arizona again. It's one of those things now where on this show specifically, it's kind of good that I'm doing it every day because the face of the playoff picture is going to change every day now with all these teams playing each other, because I'm mentioning that they play all these teams, but San Diego and Arizona sure play each other. St. Louis, Chicago, and Cincinnati sure play each other. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are still going to. San Francisco is going to play Arizona. They could sweep the Diamondbacks in one of those remaining series, and then all of a sudden they're up there. And that's where I think it's so fun, is that the Pirates at least are involved in the conversation, right? They're not like 7 games out and saying we have to have a winning streak to do this. Now, it would be nice, and you might have to have one to stay in it, but you don't need to have a massive winning streak just to get in the conversation. They are fully in the conversation, and that's why the trade deadline over the next couple of weeks, Mike, I think is going to be a little bit interesting. I think it's going to be a little bit fun. So we're going to discuss that in the final part of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network in just a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Shop supplyhouse.com right now, because you can get supplies from the site that is made for the skilled trades. That's supplyhouse.com. Supply House is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online, and their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources on the latest product info to help you get the job done right. You can get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trade can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. So join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. And folks, if you want to make some money on sports betting here in the wonderful state of Pennsylvania, make sure you go do it at FanDuel, because FanDuel is offering their customers so much this summer, because FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. For the Pittsburgh Pirates, folks, I mean, anytime you bet on Paul Skeens, you're probably making money. It's not that difficult. Anytime you're betting on Brian Reynolds, you're probably making money. So why not parlay them together and make even more money with the same game parlay on FanDuel? You can even bet on women's basketball. You can bet on probably the Olympics, I would imagine. I don't know if they're going to have Olympic lines, but you could even bet on future lines for the NFL and college football. Who's going to take home the college football national championship? Who's going to win the AFC North? You can bet on all of that on FanDuel.com. So head over to FanDuel and start making the most out of your summer, because FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball and an official sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. All righty, folks. It is July 19th. Shout out to all my folks who didn't buy the deluxe edition of College Football 25 to get to play today. You're going to love the game, I promise. What that means, though, in the broad scope of things here on this show, is that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 days until July 31st. Pirates will be in Houston at 8 o'clock Central, or 8 o'clock Eastern that day. That also just so happens to be the trade deadline, Mr. Nicastro. And I think it's interesting that the names that we've kind of heard thrown around already. You hear that the Marlins are trading Jazz Chisholm. What are the White Sox going to do with Crochet and Luis Robert? Taylor Ward might be a target for the Pittsburgh Pirates. J.J. Bleday. You've heard names. But what do you, sir, think the Pirates are going to do, and how are they going to handle this tumultuous period that we know is the trade deadline?
Yeah, and listen, I want to clear up if anybody's listening and saying, man, I tell you what, this idiot Steelers guy, he's really down on the Pirates. I'm not. I think they're right in it, contingent on adding a bat. And I think they can be a playoff team, 100%. So I guess I'll start with what I'd like them to do, and then what I think they'll do. So what I'd like them to do is go all in to a degree. You know, it's easy for me to sit here and say this, of course, without actually, handing over a Bubba Chandler or a Braxton Ashcraft myself. But you want to talk about the tiers, break that down. The number one player available in regard to fit is Luis Robert. There's not a question in my mind. This is a young power hitter, controllable center fielder, who slots right into that lineup and is probably immediately the second best bat on the team behind Brian Reynolds. Him and O'Neill Cruz. I mean, how much fun would they be, hitting 40 home runs each potentially the next
Yeah.
few years? And it's a move, obviously, that helps supplement the fact that you're going to have Skeens here and you're going to have Keller and Jared Jones and, hopefully some others contributing. Listen, obviously, we don't know the price tag. It might start with, say, hey, Chandler and Termar. And in that case, maybe Charrington is less inclined to make a Chris Archer type deal. But Ethan, let me tell you this, and I'm not afraid to say this because it's the truth. When Neil Huntington made the Chris Archer trade, I remember where I was. I was sitting in my car. I think I was shopping at a Kmart. Shout out old Kmart's, not a sponsor by the way of Locked On. I fist pumped. I heard it on the radio, and I was so excited because I knew this was kind of the last go with that team. They needed an ace. I thought Archer was the guy at the time who would really give them that last push. Obviously, the results, one of the worst trades in baseball history, probably, when you're talking Glasnow, Boss, Meadows. But I liked the intent, which was go for it, let's buy big, and let's just go all out. It didn't work, right? Sometimes that happens. I want to see that happen here with Ben. Why not go for it with this team at this time? Skeens could command a $500 million contract in 5 years. I know Tawny-like contract. Who knows? And so that's Robert. I think the second tier there is Chisholm and Brent Rooker, also two good, controllable players who would immediately be one of your better hitters.
Yeah.
Chisholm with some control as well. Rooker more of a corner player, a little bit of a DH there. And I think Jazz 2020 guy. Those guys don't grow on trees. They really don't. And then the last couple, as you mentioned, I think Taylor Ward, I'll get back to him in a second. Two names that haven't really been thrown out there, I think, are if they want to go the rental route, the Marlon Byrd route, Tommy Pham, I think, is a guy to watch out for on the Sox. He was with the D-backs last year. High energy guy. He's productive. He's better than what they've had in right field. And then I want to throw out the name Lamont Wade Jr. I haven't heard anybody really talk about him at all. Giants, primarily first base, but has played a lot of outfield in his past.
Yep.
He's not going to be an above average defender in the outfield, but he can get on base and he can really hit. And that's one of those middling teams in the National League that I think is probably going to fall out of the pack and lean towards sell. So I want them to go all in, chips on the table. Robert, Rooker. I bet Taylor Ward is what happens. That's why I'm getting to him last. I think it makes a lot of sense from a return perspective. You're not going to have to part with Bubba or Tamar, I don't think. Maybe you do get into that, Ashcraft territory, which is still risky. Maybe a Harrington, McAdoo package or something gets that done, which fans would still not be happy with. I know that. But Taylor Ward makes sense. You don't sell the farm. He's also controllable. He's been productive. He's a major upgrade of what they've had at the corner spots in the outfield. So that is my prediction. Maybe a Taylor Ward, Tommy Pham combo. But I want to see him go get Luis Robert or Jazz Chisholm.
Yeah, and I understand the sentiment there too. Now, obviously, Luis Robert, one of my favorite players in baseball, just has an injury problem. That's what kills me about him. He can, for some reason, not stay off the injured list, and it's frustrating. The price, I think, is too high. And I know the price is too high because I've already read things about the White Sox and what they're doing, and people are saying, why is the price so high on Luis Robert? And it's Pirates fans saying this, Mike. And I say, remember what the Pirates did in 2022 with Brian Reynolds? Remember what they did in 2021 with Brian Reynolds when they were asking for, the most ungodly packages from teams that you'd ever seen? Yeah, it's because they don't really want to trade them. They just want to see if somebody's going to be dumb enough to give them that much. Now, I'm not saying that it would be dumb to give the White Sox Chandler and Johnson for Robert. I'm stopping it there. I'm not trading you anything else. If you want those guys that bad, take them. Have fun. We're not giving you anything else. You're not getting a McAdoo. You're not getting a Harrington. You're not getting anything else after that. Jazz, on the other hand, don't think it would be that expensive. You might be talking about one or two of the guys, maybe a Termar, just because they need middle infield help very badly. I also wouldn't mind seeing a Jack Sawinski be a part of a deal like that either. I've been, for some reason, really stuck on the Rays. I don't know why. You have Isaac Paredes. You have Yandy Diaz, who could play either corner infield spot. If you want to get production out of third base, you could play one of those guys there. Or if you want to, screw it, just DH one of them. But I like the idea still of a Isaac Paredes because he's 25, controllable for a while. You could slot him in at first base, which in turn creates a domino effect because then you can push Connor Joe to right field consistently. So then you're fixing two things at once, and you're getting a guy that's controllable. On top of that, if you wanted to and you didn't want to go that route and you just want to go get an outfielder, why not Randy Arozarena? You brought up Vibes guy. I know he's not having the greatest year, but could you imagine Randy Arozarena and O'Neal Cruz in the same clubhouse together with Joshua Palacios? I mean, oh my God. Like
energy.
They might, I was going to say, they might have the energy and the vibes of the 79 Pirates going on.
A lot of Red Bull.
Yeah, there's a lot of Red Bull in that clubhouse. But I'll end the show with this, Mike, a question for you. Do you truthfully believe that this team can stay in it late in the season? Do you think in the middle of September, the Pirates aren't going to have a E beside their name just yet in the middle of September? Do you think they could stay in it through the remainder of the year?
Pitching will be good enough to stay in it. Once again, it's contingent on will they bring in a bat or two. Isaac Paredes would be nice. Maybe you ship the current third baseman to Tampa in that deal. No, I'm being facetious. Or maybe you send him to Indianapolis. He's coming around a little bit, Ke'Bryan Hayes. I mean, it was a cheesy comment, but a fair transition. If Ke'Bryan Hayes can hit like he did last year in the second half, and if the Pirates can bring in a bat, then they will be right there at the very end.
Yep.
Because of the starting pitching. I think we're going to see Jones and Falter back at some point here, and Skeens, Keller, and Ortiz have been good enough to keep them in the fight long enough. Big second half from Hayes, bring in a bat, and I think they are right there at the end, hopefully playing the New York Yankees in the last series of the year with a chance to make a wild card push.
Wouldn't that be something? Final game of the season, I can write a perfect picture for it too. Skeens going up against the Yankees and get them in the playoffs. Wouldn't that be something?
A longer bat against Judge. How about that? You'll get your longer bat to end the year.
You'll get more than one at bat, more than likely. You'll probably get 2 or 3.
Spot.
Yeah, and it's all fun, but today the second half officially starts against the Philadelphia Phillies at, I believe, 6:40, or did they finally push it back to 7:05? I always forget.
It's going to be hot regardless.
Yeah, I mean, it's 6:40. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to the game Sunday, and it's going to be 1:45, so I'm going with my mom, so it's okay. It'll be that'll make up for it. But that's Mike Nicastro, folks. Mike, what do you got going on throughout the rest of the baseball season? And oh my God, wait, I just got something on my watch. Training camp starts next week, so I'm assuming you're going to be all over that. So what do you got for the people over on your end of the spectrum?
Tweeting Buccos, at least baseball related, at Mic'd Up Sports 1. So always make sure to join me there. Hopefully can join you whenever the playoff push is complete. And then, yeah, of course, we have a couple of things at Sick Podcast, Steelers Crazy. Go like and subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, as we all like to say. Last year, we did the Jaylen Warren show, 17 weeks with the Steelers running back. This year, we got a little bit of surprise for everybody. We haven't announced yet, but we're going to have some really, really cool Steelers shows coming up this fall weekly. We still do it now with a bunch of analysts, so make sure you subscribe and check in on us there, and follow me on social media, Mic'd Up Sports 1. And, hopefully we can do it again, man.
Oh, yeah, of course. And you guys could find all my stuff on Spotify, your other audio platforms, and YouTube. This show is available to you Monday through Friday, free as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday. And until next time, see you on the flip side.